Most of you know what we do when we start off these live streams here is we cover Bitcoin first, so we're going to dive straight into Bitcoin. I'm not going to give you much preface, and then roughly halfway through we'll take some Q&A questions, so let's dive into the charts. First thing I want to point out on current price action, I'm going to start off with the daily chart here. We're kind of in a limbo land. However, there is some decent hope for a significant pop above 32K here. It's possible. It is possible. However, the conditions for making that probable have not been met, but the ingredients are beginning to brew. So we don't have all the ingredients to bake this, pump cake, but we're getting more of them. And the first thing I wanted to point out is I wish there wasn't so much lag on the questions or the text over there, but wish I could ask a question in real time and have somebody answer, as we do on Discord, where somebody can just answer on their microphone or whatever. But what are we seeing here? That's one of the key things that I look for before I say, hey, Bitcoin has permission to bounce. We're looking at a potential higher low, and let me zoom way in here. And it's important to know why this is still potential. What is it about this? So you see how all these have little junctures, right? So for example, as I do the path tool up here, this is one well, if it's going to let me. Oh, it won't let me do it. Well, one juncture, two juncture, three juncture, 4, 5, 6, 7. That might be 8, 9. 10, 11. So each of those is one day, right? And this day has not closed, right? Therefore, this juncture can move around until 8 p.m. New York time. So see how it's almost like your elbow, like if you're doing a robot dance or whatever, right? So he's in a robot dance limbo. Hopefully y'all like my analogies. This is not confirmed as a higher low yet. So just be very careful whenever you're trying to, especially if you're newer to the charts or maybe, maybe been looking at charts for a year. But this is one thing that I probably didn't realize at least a year deep into playing with charts this is one thing I overlooked. This can move. So make sure you're focusing on that. Therefore, it is sort of kind of in limbo. And if you try to backtest that, okay, is it maybe out of the last 9 times something like this has happened, maybe 9 times out of 10 it has gone up. Therefore, it's not technically in limbo if you do it from a statistical basis. Well, if you look at, let's see here, where is it? Up here. Here's a good example, right here. Back in 14th and 15th of January, it did roughly the same thing. You had a low. Deep into the red zone, you got straight above the EMA. So you see, actually, let me zoom into this. So you had a deep move to the downside. It immediately went above. So see that white line? It immediately went above the EMA instead of what's more common is this. This is way more common after a move down. You usually get rejected by the EMA, make a higher low, rejected, a higher low, then get above. Like this little area here is much more common. However, sometimes it does this. It goes straight above, bounces up, and then works its way up. Sort of almost like this. Sometimes that happens, but it's not always guaranteed. So the deeper you go, the less likely that this is going to happen. Does that make sense? So you see how it jumped straight above and kept climbing? Well, the deeper into the red zone, the less likely of that to happen that you're going to get. All right. Unless it's an extreme, then actually if you go super deep in, like coronavirus, then you actually have more of a chance. So in this middle of the red is like the worst chances you have of it completely just going like this, right? So it is roughly right in the middle, right here. And over here, it's also right in the middle. So you have slightly less of a chance. But what could happen is you jump. So the very last time that this happened, it did jump above and it broke all the way down, right? And I would assume because the RSI is roughly in the same area and it's behaving roughly the same way, I would bet that if I went to price and I put a fractal from this section to this section, it would align fairly closely. So watch. So that was the 11th of January to the 22nd of January. something like this effect. And of course, the second part of the move down, that what you got right here, that has not happened yet. I'm more focusing, we would be equivalent of right here, right? If something similar were to happen. And I'm just guessing that this would align roughly the same way. Take a look at that. Does it get the wick all the way correct? No, it doesn't. And I don't think the fractals actually take the wick, so you can't see any wick that would have been there anyway, the candle bodies. But the candle bodies are pretty dang similar. See that? So this would be taking stuff down all the way to 24K or slightly lower with a wick. So that would actually be hitting this origin line here at 22.8 if something similar were to happen. And this is the very, very last time that you got a similar signature on the RSI. And you can also note that in this fractal, it does float up and out of this channel here. So you have to consider this as one possibility. However, if this can, and remember the last time this happened, it actually bounced twice. And it was on this juncture right here that it actually went bam. It fell down, right? So we could keep going sideways for a little bit longer. However, if price can keep going sideways, and this doesn't break down, it probably will start charging up. And the here, let me actually stop using the highlighter. If price can continue going sideways, Bitcoin has a chance of doing this. So this would be the EMA, and then this would be the RSI here. It has a chance to do that. And then typically, if that happens, it'll then break down, make a higher low in price and a macro, like what I call a macro RSI higher high, and do something to that effect. As it enters, as it gets between this red and white line, it typically wants to come back down, assuming it got that deep. But this would be something, I mean, that would probably be 36, 35, that would be over 35K. If something like that were to happen, it would go up significantly. And so let's take a look at if there's anything somewhere around 35, 36K. The weekly 10 over those days would be coming down and would be right at 35, 36K. So that would be so that'd be breaking up and out of this trading channel and then testing roughly that would be roughly testing the weekly 10 EMA, which is still, let me put on my big face here. That's still bearish. Going up to the weekly 10 when price is below it and bumping your head on it after a powerful move to just test the weekly 10, that's still bearish. There's nothing bullish about it. What's bullish is when you close weekly candles above the weekly 10. But Bitcoin is so far from doing that, and I would guess it might not happen for another 8 months. Like there might not be a weekly candle closing above that weekly 10 for quite a while. I mean, late 2022, early 2023. It might be a long, long time. I might be wrong, but I would guess that it's going to be months and months. So unit of measurement easiest to count is not days or weeks. It would probably be easiest to count in months for when you get a weekly closure over the weekly 10, right? So it's still not super bullish in the grand scheme of things. Let me put myself back over here. All right, let me get rid of some of these squiggly lines. Now, is the stock market also in, actually, let's look at the, let's go to the 1 hour chart. So it's a little in limbo, right? And we can't really tell what's going to happen on the daily quite yet. I don't feel an edge on that chart at all. And I would assume that, actually, let me go back to the day. I would assume that the Stokes are kind of wiggling around as well on the daily. Yeah, so you see how the Stokes are wiggling around? Usually when you feel that things are uncertain, the Stokes kind of tell you things are uncertain as well. They're wiggling around. And I don't feel that I can find an edge on the daily chart. Let's go to the 4 hour chart. Let's look at the Stokes first. Are the Stokes wiggling around? Yeah, they are. Is the 4 hour RSI at an exact point where it could go either way? Absolutely. It went deep into the red zone. It's finally bumping its head here. It's very common that when you get a powerful move up, that's when you make what I call a macro higher low on the RSI, and it has to come up, and that would be a higher low in price. But also, when you get into this area, this zone right here, this is what I call the golden pocket. But typically getting to the golden pocket on a screamer like this on RSI, you typically come down one more time and then bump your way up to this golden pocket zone. So the golden pocket is being between the white and the red. And the reason why that happens on the 4-hour chart after coming down this far, and if you scream up to the golden pocket, well, why do you think it's very, very common in that exact scenario that the 4-hour RSI will then come down real hard, way below the EMA? Why? What chart did we just look at? The daily. Because the daily is not ready to get its horses going, right? It's not in that golden pocket. It's still in the red zone. It has to wait on the daily. So the 4-hour is trying to essentially pull his friend up out of a hole. Like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And right now the friend is only about halfway there. So the 4-hour RSI isn't ready to go, running into the woods or whatever. He's still pulling out his friend out of a hole, essentially, right? And so it might look like the 4-hour RSI is ready to go, but his friend, the daily, is only halfway there. Let me get rid of these. His friend, the daily, he's only halfway there. You see that? All right. All right, let me go to the 1-hour chart. So let's see if we can get a little bit more clarity on what's going to happen. Actually, I'm kind of spoiling it because for my daily update for my community, I already put this box here, so I forgot to remove it. So you can already tell where I think price is going. And I gave that update a little bit ago before this candle started making it obvious. But so before this candle really started tanking, why did I put this box here? I saw a lower high on both the 1-hour RSI and a lower high on the 1-hour Stokes. So that gives me a very probabilistic scenario. When you see both a lower high on Stokes and RSI on the or really any chart, honestly, if it's the 12-hour chart, I would be putting on some massive shorts. I love that signal on the 12-hour chart. But typically that opportunity only presents itself once every 90 to 100 days. It's a big signal. And I think it happened, and it's a signal I missed like an idiot back in May 2021. The 12-hour RSI did the same thing there right before the drop to 29K. Very unfortunate that I missed that. I must have been distracted or something. I'm not for sure how I missed that move down. But anyway, therefore, I can tell that it's extremely probable that this is going to be hit first, but that's still not far enough down. So it could then bounce and keep floating sideways. And therefore, the daily RSI, let's see how many hours that would take to hit. If that were to happen, if it hits it fast and it bounces, 12 hours, that'd be 10 o'clock. Yeah, it would in 8, so in about 10 hours, that would be the end of the day. The day could end right here. And that would potentially give you that confirmed higher low, and that last juncture on the daily, as I showed you, this juncture right here would end it would be close to having a positive slope. It would lock that in slightly positive slope. And then, therefore, you'd have essentially locked in a lower high to give you a slightly more potential that Bitcoin has permission to move up. But in the meantime, it looks like this box is going to be hit. And so, what does all this mean? Everything what I said is a long version of what? I can't tell what the hell's going to happen past the hourly chart. I'm only getting hourly signals. I can't find an edge on the 4-hour chart. I can't find an edge on the daily. And what that means, so this is something that I would go over more within the Discord community. So I'm going to give you a little bit more information than what I typically provide on YouTube, but we're on a live show here. But so what that would mean is, remember, hopefully you watched my YouTube, or it might have been my Solana video. You might skip to the end of my Solana video where you see me up here like this, as if I were in the movie Pan's Labyrinth or whatever, right? With eyeballs here. But I was talking about you have to compartmentalize your brain and think completely different on different time frames. So in my brain, I have to accept that this block and this block, I don't know. I can't find an edge, but this block I do. And I have to understand, if I'm clicking around with my money trading, I have to understand those things so that I realize what my entries should be like, which would be less money, right? Because I don't have much of an edge beyond the 1-hour chart. I don't want to put on big trades. And also from a profit, so my risk management would probably stay the same. So there are 3 elements to trading, right? Entries, profit taking and risk management. My risk management would probably stay the same, but my entries and profit taking, they would be different. My entries, I would enter lightly. I wouldn't take on huge positions, and the positions after the move starts going my way, I would take profits more quickly, more aggressively, because I can't tell. I can't see beyond, a few feet. It's like driving in the fog. You don't go as fast, right? Hopefully most of you have experienced fog. You can't drive fast in it when it's heavy fog. So actually, that's a better analogy. And so when those three compartments, you only have the smallest one of three, that's literally like driving in the fog or heavy rain. You can't drive as fast, right? Okay. Yeah, that's actually not a bad analogy. I like that one. All right. Let me go to the top right. Therefore, it's not just bland to say, I don't know what's going to happen. It actually has consequences and very specific things that it should signal you, especially if you're clicking around with your money. It specifically means when you trade more lightly, and when you're in position, when you're in the trade, you take profits more quickly or more aggressively because you're driving slow and you just need to do that. And so it's not bad to say, I don't know what the hell is going to happen on the 4-hour daily chart. All I know is that this is going to be hit, and then I'll reassess once that happens. And let's go ahead and take a look at Nasdaq. And I try not to analyze this too much on YouTube. I try to save that for the other services I provide. But just take a look at this. Does this also look okay? Here, let me take these things off. I'll keep on the weekly 10. There we go. In my origin lines. Oop, I didn't mean to get rid of that other rectangle. Shoot, I need that pink rectangle on there. Hold on. There we go, that one. All right. We have a couple of support areas and the weekly 10. So is price on so Bitcoin definitely is following Nasdaq as of now, right? And my overall hope is that Bitcoin finally separates itself from Nasdaq if the traditional market can go down longer than what Bitcoin wants to, and so because the Bitcoin halvening people start stepping in and Bitcoin launches while this is still going down, so hopefully traditional market folks freaking turn off their dang algorithmic trading that is equal, like they're trading this and Bitcoin at like in the same parameters. It's really strange. When they buy this or Apple or Amazon, they buy Bitcoin and it goes up if Amazon goes, and even though there's nothing in the charts for Bitcoin saying it's going to go up, Bitcoin would go up if Amazon, for example, Amazon had it went up 18% in 1 second at a daily closure from where was it? I can't even remember where it was. It was maybe in early April when they reported their earnings because they raised prices or something for Amazon Prime. And off-hours trading, it went up instantly 18%, and Bitcoin without any signal went up 5% in a 5-minute candle. It's ridiculous. So Bitcoin's following this, but anyway, I'm kind of hoping for separation if this can go down longer than what Bitcoin wants to go down. But anyway, Bitcoin's following this for now. So what can we see with these from the weekly 10? Price, it's bearish. So pressure's down. Price is very far separated from this. Even if the stock market rallies up to here and kisses its weekly 10 or even wicks above, it's still likely to continue going down, right? Until you get a couple weekly closures above there, and this weekly 10 gets a positive slope like that, something like this. So that's when you can start being slightly more bullish. But as of now, that slope is accelerating to the downside. So the pressure's down. We can safely assume that. On any time frame bigger than the daily and above, the pressure's down. Maybe the pressure's up on the 1 hour and 5 minutes, sure, but the bigger time frames that matter, the pressure's down. Now, with that assumption, what happened the last time that Nasdaq Composite here met a horizontal of importance, and so see how here, let me zoom in. You see how price it bounced on this, and then the next time it bounced slightly lower than the actual support. So from my recent Bitcoin videos, what do I say when that happens? If you find support lower than true support, and that's where you bounce. You bounce under support and come back above the support. It's extremely likely to be a lower high, and then you're going to come back down. And the one way that you can get out of this mess before going down is if you miss the support, come up and make a higher low and try doing that. That's when you can work yourself out. It's not guaranteed that you're going to continue going down, but it does have an extreme likelihood. Once you miss the support, you will make a lower high. And then you're essentially on a watch. Will the next low be lower than this one, or will it establish a higher low? In this case, it is slightly more likely to continue making lower lows. So what did this just do? It missed a horizontal, and it bounced after a horizontal. However, it did bounce on an origin line. This origin line freaking nailed that, right? It nailed it. And we're kind of in limbo. It did find this support, but this horizontal, it missed it. And what's it doing? It's coming up, making a much lower high, because that's way up there. It's making a lower high. So from a daily standpoint, it has a chance to make a higher low and wiggle itself out. But at this time, I just can't tell. And this is an agreement with the idea that I can't tell what's going to happen on Bitcoin or the traditional markets right now. I don't feel that there's a lot of clarity, and things are. But this is very common. So when there's a very volatile move, right? Volatility is kind of like price. How volatile an asset goes, it also oscillates, just like price goes up and down, and does all that stuff. So does volatility. So volatility just screamed up, and now volatility is wanting to work itself back down. That means price does less cool stuff. It just simmers down and it gets boring, and that's what's happening. At the culmination of the boring, it starts heating up again, but we're pretty far from that. It's going to take a while. So during this boring stuff, the only thing that I can see happening is more boring. So the edge right now is more sideways and a lot shorter moves, and that's the only edge I have. And with that edge, how would that translate? For example, for people who don't click around much with their money and they don't trade futures, I'm not recommending you go straight to futures with this next, because that's a good way to lose your money if you've never played with that before. But for people who click around on that kind of stuff, and they want to make $100, their goal is $10 a day, $100 a day, or whatever, off a few trades. What is that idea? So the only edge we have is more boring and less volatility, and perhaps sideways, or sideways down, or sideways up, or sideways, but just lack of volatility. That's the only edge we have. How does that translate into people who are clicking around with their money? It means you enter with less money in smaller positions, and you take profits more quickly, and that's all it means. So unfortunately, that is my analysis for Bitcoin right now, and I can't, until the volatility keeps like smashing down a little bit. And actually, let's take a look at the volatility on an indicator. I think it's called BBWP here. Bollinger Band width percentile. I think that's the right one. Yeah, there we go. Let me look at the daily on, so let's look at both of them actually. You can see that volatility is up really high. So what does it need to do? It needs to come back down. Just like when price goes up too fast, too quickly, or goes up too high too fast, it comes back down and gets boring, and then decides after it gets boring, which way am I going? And you can't quite tell until it breaks a range resolution, essentially, right? Sometimes you get a hint if price is floating up in what people call an ascending parallel channel. That's typically slightly bearish for Bitcoin. And if it floats down like this, if it floats down with low volatility, for Bitcoin, that's typically more bullish, as weird as that is. It's kind of the inverse of what you would think. But right now, Bitcoin is literally going straight ass sideways. Like you can't tell what the heck is going to happen. And you can see this on the volatility chart. Volatility's high, so the only edge you have is the volatility is going to go down. Stuff's going to get slightly more boring. The moves are going to be smaller for a little bit. Let's go to Bitcoin and see what this looks like. I mean, this really got maxed out. So this is the day. So when the daily maxes out that many, I don't think that's very common. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's yeah. So this could take a while. It could go sideways and pretty boring for over a month and a half if it's that red. It's going to take a while for it to simmer down. Let's zoom out and see how common that is. So 1, 2, 3, about 5 of them here. So how many days ago was that? Look, that was a year ago. You see that? This doesn't happen very often. So it's probably going to simmer down for a little bit. Is it guaranteed to? No. Just like stochastics or price, what it can do is this could make a higher low and do it all over again, and that could be like the end of capitulation in July. That could easily happen. It just screams back. It screams down to 22K, which is a pretty good target for a possible Bitcoin bottom, or it screams down to 16 to 17 to 18K or something like that. The one thing I don't think is going to happen for a bottom is exactly 20K, because I think I tweeted about that. I don't think anything within $500 of 20K is going to be a bottom, because the big boys and exchanges are within there. They're not going to want people like me and you to be able to long 20K. They're not going to let that happen. It's either going to come up shy of 20K, or it's going to go below 20K and wash out all the people trying to long around 20K. It's one of those is very, very likely going to happen. I would actually, I don't bet very often because I like to be the house yo, but I would, if somebody wants to bet me on that, the Bitcoin bottom is not close to 20K. I would probably take that bet because I think it's a very, very good bet. Therefore, it's not guaranteed it's going to be boring forever. It could do this one more time and then get boring for a long time. So all this down move, what that means is volatility drops and it drops and it drops and it drops until it turns around and gets above like a median line here. It's going to be boring this whole time until it gets back above a certain threshold point where things get exciting again. Does that make sense? But in the meantime, it could get boring and then heat up again and then get boring for a longer time. That's completely possible. I bet there's an example of that in the chart. Yeah, right here. Whatever this was, December. So late December, it did that. What did price do in late December? So things got boring, then it heated up one more time, and then things cooled off. And that's what that double dip was. But since pressure's down, so you see how price was above the weekly 10? Well, if something similar to happen, it would go in the opposite direction, because right now the slope of the weekly 10 is down and price is below it. So it would be essentially the inverse of this. It would slow down, then continue down as this continued up, because this has a positive slope and price is above it. Make sense? However, if that's just a guess, and I don't think there's a strong edge to make that assumption that far out. And that's what I got for Bitcoin. So I only spent about 28, 29 minutes on that, and we're going to go to live questions. Hopefully that was helpful for you, and how you should interpret what it means. So even though it's kind of more of a boring analysis, it's very important to understand I don't have an edge beyond the 1 hour chart, therefore I should or shouldn't do this. Like, what does it mean for your finger on your mouse clicking around? What does it mean? And it really is an important meaning. So even though the analysis is boring, the implications of that, or how that translates, the translation of that, is really important. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll start with the Q&A now.